Hello, welcome to the Turret of Pleasure here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I am your host and the Lord Chamberlain of the Enchanted Kingdom, Zipgun. I want to talk some music today. I want to talk about an artist that I really like, who combines a lot of the things I like about collecting records and CDs all in one artist. I like the fact that there's a lot of record label lore and interesting stuff that I don't know. He was fairly popular. He was formative on my influence when I was a kid. The story, well, how the hell should I do this story? I was with my friend Tony Stark, high school buddy, and Tony had a dad, Jim Stark, who was a single dad, architect, cool guy. Really cool guy, really cool taste in music. Jim got me into Vivaldi. Jim personally knew Ralph Towner. How cool was that? But a really nice guy, really cool dad, the hip dad of the 70s. And I remember one fine day I bought a couple of Captain Beefheart records, right when I first discovered The Good Captain. I bought Lick My Dickles Off and Spotlight Kid, I think it was. I took him over to where, I forget whose place it was. Anyway, Jim had a lot of his records there. And they were playing this really hip, kind of like the kind of music that a hip bachelor pad might play. Like a cool dude would play this quietly in the background while maybe smoking a hookah pipe. And I went over and looked, and it was a cool record because you opened the gatefold and there was a square hole in the cover, and then there was the photo, and you closed the thing and there was the name, Herbie Mann, Stone Flute. And I thought, this is cool. Wow. And it was pretty cool. It was a neat record, and I still really like this record. It was very slick, but it was also jazz, and I hadn't heard any jazz really up to this point. Like, I thought bands like Chilliwack were jazz, or the first Chicago Transit Authority album was jazz. I didn't really know what jazz was. And so Herbie Mann kind of piqued my interest. And as I got into jazz, and as I got into more free music, improvised music, Herbie went from strength to strength. A lot of people don't realize how many great musicians went through Herbie's band. And Herbie was essentially like Herbie at the Village Gate. I forget who's on this now. But Haygood Hardy, the Vibes, great Canadian Vibes legend. Roy Ayers, funk legend. Sonny Chirac, noise guitar legend. Miroslav Vitus, who formed Weather Report. Look them up. There's a long list. And in 1960, when he'd already been recording for a lot like a decade, he got signed to Atlantic by Nisui Erdogan. And Nisui was a big fan of jazz. He was also he had great commercial instincts. For instance, it was Nisui who signed Sonny and Cher. And they did I Got You, Babe. And he was like, I don't like this record, but I knew it was going to be a hit. And so he had really good commercial instincts. And yet he knew how to record these jazz artists, people like Ornette Coleman, without ruining their music. Charles Mingus, a lot of these guys. And so he picked up Herbie in 1960, and they did a few records, and they started to sell quite well. Because Middle America, this was jazz for Middle America, sort of pop jazz, if you will. And Herbie was a good player. He could improvise great. He always had really good bands, and they always were a little bit on the edge. For example, by the time Windows Opened came out, this is a band with Sonny Chirac, Miroslav Vitus, Roy Ayers, can't remember the drummer, and so this is like 1968. And Sonny does a solo on the title song, written by Roy Ayers, that's just, the hip people are going to kind of go, does he kind of know what he's doing? Or is he just moving around there? Anyway, Herbie really got big. He went from strength to strength in the 60s. Stone Flute. It's out on Wounded Bird, which is some Warner-specific reissue label. Live at the Whiskey A Go-Go. 2 songs, 1 on each side. Again, Sonny does a great solo on this. And apparently when Sonny would solo, that's when everybody would go for a smoke. But it's great because it's hipster music. It almost defines the word hipster. And yet, when Sonny takes over, it's fucked up. His biggest hit is almost certainly Memphis Underground, featuring the late great Larry Coryell, the Memphis Shoal rhythm section, and yes, in the corner there, way in the corner, you can see him, Sonny Chirac, who lays down an insane noise solo in the otherwise very funky and hip "Hold On, I'm A-Comin'." And you can feel Tom Dowd reach out and turn that fader down once the solo starts to really get going. You can just get it out of that mix, man, Jesus. But he went from strength to strength, and after about 1972, Duane Allman, this is the one all the ladies remember. Yes, he's a hairy man. Who's that? What were they thinking? Okay, now we're into the what were we thinking part of the show. Whose idea was this? Herbie, was this your idea? Was there cocaine involved? And nubile young women? I don't even want to know. Anyway, Herbie did a lot of neat stuff. One of the things he did was he seemed to have something to do, and this is where I need information from you good people. There was a label called Vortex. Atlantic put it out 1968, 1970. 14 releases, every one of them worth listening to once. Several gigantic jazz artists put their first records out on Vortex. Chick Corea, Keith Jarrett, Sonny Chirac, Bjard Lancaster, what's his name? Clifford Jarvis did a good one. And Herbie seemed to have a lot to do with most of those ones. And then after 14, it just stopped. I don't know why. And then suddenly Embryo Records came along. And Embryo really was, apparently, Herbie Mann's boutique label. And not only did they put out quite a few of Herbie's records, Push Push, I believe, is on. Oh, yeah. This is old. Look at this. Actually, the CD is on Embryo. That's weird. Anyway, Embryo put out a lot of cool stuff. Tonto's Expanding Ed Band, which was the crazy synth record with Margouleff and Cecil, the guys who did Stevie Wonder's classic records. They did a synth solo record, which is legendary. Chris Hill's Everything Is Everything, which I just discovered on YouTube, which is absolutely terrific. And what's it? Sandy Nasser solo guitar record. Really interesting. Anyway, Herbie must have done well for Atlantic for them to do all this. And like jazz doesn't sell, does it? Well, I guess maybe it did. Anyway, Herbie went on and on. He was with Atlantic for, I think it was 25 years. And they put out record after record after record, and a lot of different guys. Tony Levin was in his band for quite a while, playing bass. And this CD is great because this is kind of, if you're into Herbie Mann like I am, this is the two sides of Herbie Mann that'll drive you crazy. Because record number 1 is Gagaku and Beyond, which came out on the Finidar label, which is another fascinating label that Atlantic did in those days, which was, it seemed to be led by a fellow named Ilan Mimiroglu, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, a Turkish composer that was a friend of the Erdogan's. And they basically gave him a custom label to do all kinds of weird stuff, mostly 20th century classical. Frank Zappa did the liner notes for a reissue of a classic Varese record, and I'll buy anything on Vinidar. But they let Herbie Mann do this Japanese fusion with Gagaku and him, and his band took Tony Levin's on this, and it came out on Finidar, and it's pretty interesting. And it's cool that Herbie was trying to do these new things, even though he was definitely under the gun to be highly commercial, because I guess he was in that sort of at that level of success that you have to maintain, or they lose interest. And the CD it's ganged up with is Astral Island. And believe me, folks, where's the cover? There's the cover. Now, this is 1983. This is the millionth record in a row for Atlantic. He's completely run out of ideas. All the guys in his band have graduated. He's got a bunch of dudes. And they put out, a computer could have generated this record. It is Fusac, light jazz, soft jazz, whatever you want to call it. Theme from Tootsie. Oh my goodness. An actor's like, I don't recognize anybody on this record. I'm not even going to say who they are because they probably don't like it either. And just to add insult to injury, there's a vocoder on one song. Prophet 5 and vocoder. Excellent. The sound of this record is so thin and compressed. It's dog shit. And, again, just to make you scratch your head, the record apparently was produced by Herbie Mann, Lou Vogue, Buddy Williams, Frank Gravis, Congus Yalkaya, and Amit Erdogan, who I'll bet wasn't there for 1 second of this session. Not long after this record came out, to an absolute absence of any reaction by anybody whatsoever, including, most importantly, the buying public, he parted ways with Atlantic. Then they re-signed him for 1 record after this in '85. And that was it. He was never on a major label again. Hopelessly out of fashion. I play this record sometimes in my car just for perverse fascination, but don't play the Gagaku in the car because there's a lot of yelling and banging. But I had to buy this. I saw this in a record store years ago. And it was it's on Collectibles Jazz Classics. They're cheap. They're about $10, $12. And they're a great way to fill out collections. I've got a few of these. And apparently, I think Rhino runs it. So it's all, this one is Live at the Whiskey and Mississippi Gambler, which is from considerably later. I Can't Get No Satisfaction on it. Bobby Emmons and Bobby Wood. Mike Leach, Potato Valdez on congas. Guitar solos by Reggie Young. David Fathead Newman's on it. He's good. The other one is Herbie Royer's Steve Marcus, who went on to be the music director for Buddy Rich Forever and Everybody. Great sax player. He did 3 records for Vortex. Sonny Chirac, Miroslav Vito's Bruno Carr. That's a pretty good one. They're relatively close. Wounded Bird was sort of a more expensive version of the collector's label. They did the Concerto Grosso in D Blues, which has Mr. Chirac on it, produced by Nisui Erdogan. William Fischler conducting the orchestra. William Fischler is a very interesting black composer. Did a lot of arranging for Herbie. He did a solo record for Embryo that's really cool. Part of it is solo Moog synthesizer, which is okay. And there's some of it is just really good sort of fusion music with guys like Hugh McCracken and Roy Carter playing their asses off on it. But it's good. Windows Open, The Inspiration I Feel. The Inspiration I Feel is not good. It's sappier than sappy could possibly be. Drown on my own tears. I don't know. Maybe your mom would like it. Windows Open is a good record. It's the Irish Chirac V2 Scar Band. And it's a pretty straight record, but it's really good. Village Gate is a little earlier than I like, but he does a pretty good version. Ain't necessarily so. But there you have it. Herbie Mann. Anything on Atlantic is worth, if it's $1 in the thrift store, buy it. If you're DJing, almost any cut will work in a DJ set at random. And he got a reputation for being a bit lame. He did a record called Discotheque, which is truly awful. As bad as you can imagine a disco record might be coming from a professional jazz flautist. And he also did a record called Reggae that's not very good either. So, I mean, if you're like me, a connoisseur of the truly awful, as well as the sublime, and, normal stuff that has stuff over the edge, the way Sonny Chirac would take this band, Herbie Mann has a lot for you, so I would recommend you explore him if you're curious. Anyway, looks like Britannia's done for. We'll talk to you later. Subscribe. I'll try and do more.